Sorry about that. Yes, it's about 11 hours later. My battery died when I was mid-spiel there, and I had to charge it, and of course then I had to go to work. So I've since gone to work and come back, and now I'm exhausted, but at least the battery's charged. So let's get this finished up here. I didn't mean to ramble quite so long, but I guess there's a lot to cover. So where were we? Bonzo and Stilson, that's right. Yeah, so in the book, it's kind of a big reveal when we discover that Bonzo and Stilson were actually killed by Ender, just from the sheer brutality of his beating of them, wanting to not only win that fight, but all the fights to come, to ensure that they would never bother him ever again, and nor would their respective cronies. So, in the book, eventually Ender comes to suspect that maybe, I don't know if he doesn't suspect maybe that Stilson died. I think maybe he does at one point, I can't remember. But anyway, he definitely suspects that Bonzo died just because of how their fight ends in the book. How he basically punches him in the face and describes it as he was bleeding out of the nose and also bleeding out of his eyes. And then he kicks him in the balls, but there's no reaction. He just keels over onto the floor of the shower room. And he thinks about it afterwards and realizes that he's pretty sure he was dead before he hit the ground. He's thinking, like, I think I might have pushed the bone into his brain or something, because he was just completely gone before he even hit the ground. And it's confirmed in the beginning of the chapters. They have sort of the conversations mostly between Anderson and Graff, but also between some of the other commanders, higher ups and whatnot, discussing the program, discussing the different kids, discussing Ender, and they mention how Bonzo died, and it was a big kerfuffle because there was a death in the battle school, so that was a big deal. And then also that Stilson, the bully, died, and that's one of the reasons that they grabbed Ender in the first place, was because of how he handled that situation. So there was that. And the other thing, while we're on the subject of Salamander Army and Bonzo and everybody there, in the book, Ender spends some time with Rat Army as well. And then finally gets moved on to Dragon Army, which is his first command, basically, where he gets to command his own army. In the movie, they don't even have Rat Army. It just goes straight from Salamander to Dragon Army. So a lot of the characters that in the book were in Rat Army, well, some of the significant ones anyway, are moved over to Salamander Army. So that's where Ender meets them in the movie, such as Dink, for example. So sad to say, with the loss of Rat Army, we also don't have Rose the Nose in the movie. So, sorry, Rose the Nose fans, he's not in the movie. And it's kind of funny. I saw some comments about the actor who plays Bonzo in the movie, and he was some felt that just because of his rather prominent proboscis, shall we say, he may have been better cast as Rose the Nose. But, and others complained about the height differential between the actor playing Ender and the actor playing Bonzo. The actor playing Bonzo is quite short, whereas the actor playing Ender is actually quite tall. He actually stands almost a full, foot and a half taller than Bonzo. So when they're going head-to-head in their, their confrontations and battle of wills and stuff, it's quite a noticeable height difference. So some people said, well, that's completely opposite to what it was in the book, because in the book, Ender was quite small, and Bonzo was bigger, pretty good-looking guy, very full of himself and stuff. So that said, I think the actor who played Bonzo in the movie did a terrific job. I mean, he had the right amount of menace, and he was the perfect adversary for Ender, and they had some great scenes together where they were really played up the battle of wills, and Ender kind of manipulating the situation and things like that. And And it was good. So I mean, I have no problem. I mean, again, it gets back to the age thing. They say, oh, the kids playing the characters are too old in the movie. Yeah, but they've got acting chops, so that's what really matters, is the performance. I mean, it's not like they cast a bunch of old men. They're still young actors. They're just not as young as they are in the book. So I don't have a problem with that. And the you know, the height difference, and you know, just slight differences in the way the character's physical stature is described in the book versus how they appear in the movie. There are some differences there, but you know, for the most part, as I say, it feels right. You know, they got the feel of it right. Really liked the actor they got to play Bean, who is shorter than Ender, and he's, you know, quite small, but he's got a lot of spunk. He's got a lot of spirit, and he really plays the character well. In terms of adapting the story, apparently they did take elements from Ender's Shadow and Ender's Game and mixed them together. I think I mentioned that earlier, actually. Sorry, it's been 11 hours since I did the first part, so I'm a little fuzzy on what I've covered already. What else was there? Just a couple of other things. Sorry, I'm just going to consult my notes real quick. I don't have a printer, so I can't print the notes right now. Yes, and then we have one of the biggest omissions, the very significant subplot of Diosthenes and Locke. Basically, Valentine and Peter's alter egos, as they kind of create these fictional personalities to, again, you know, it's like predicting the internet here. They basically create these fictional personalities to infiltrate the message boards and political forums and whatnot, and subtly influence events. Well, as these characters gain notoriety, their influence is not so subtle anymore, and that becomes a pretty significant subplot. It's somewhat significant in Ender's Game. I understand it becomes a lot more significant in future books in the series, such as Speaker for the Dead and some of the Shadow series of books. You know, figure quite prominently in there. Peter, Ender's brother, becomes quite an important character in the later books. So I definitely look forward to checking that out. But sadly, that whole subplot bites the dust in the movie. Which is perfectly understandable. I mean, it's a pretty large subplot, and you can. I mean, they really put the focus more just on Ender's story, and that's fine. And that makes sense because it keeps it tight, it keeps it focused. You don't want to have... I mean, if they were doing it as like a mini-series, like a TV mini-series event, like it was like 12 episodes long or something, then they could do all that stuff, because then they could get into all these other threads and explore the world of Ender's Game more in depth. But I mean, you've only got a slightly under 2 hour long movie. Your options are limited as far as what you can cover. That said, I think the way that they chose to combine events, swap characters around as to where they appear in the movie versus where they appear in the book, I think it works fine. I think it actually works quite well, because it at least gets those characters into the story, so we can, you know, enjoy, and then it focuses more on, you know, how they interact with Ender and just what their role is in the overall scheme of things. And I think that works quite well. They did a nice job of that. So yeah, I guess long and the short of it is, I really enjoyed the book. Obviously, I thought the book was fantastic, and I definitely recommend it for anybody who's looking for a good meaty story, but you know, still a pretty light read. I mean, it's not really heavy going. It's quite easy. It's quite accessible. It's easy to get into. It's quite accessible. It's got a lot of layers, so a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, you really get into the character's head and into, you know, his, you know, you see the world through the main character's eyes very, very clearly, and it's really quite well done in that respect. And then, did I like the movie? Well, as you probably guessed by now, yes, actually I enjoyed the movie very much, and I will absolutely watch it again. I really liked it a lot. As I say, my only real complaint about it is I wish it had been maybe about a half hour longer, just so that, because there are aspects of it, especially after reading the book, there are aspects of it that do feel a little bit rushed, and I almost feel like it suffers a little bit from Dune syndrome, where the 1984 movie of Dune, which is turning 30 this year, by the way. Yes, there will be a live viewing and commentary about it. Whereas the movie Dune is a great movie, but can be quite confusing for those who are not familiar with the book. I think Ender's Game kind of suffers a little bit from that as well. Again, much like Dune, tried to condense too much into its 2.5-hour running time, and it should have literally been a 4-hour movie. Oh, what happened to my white balance keeps shifting. Anyway, by a similar token, I think Ender's Game should have been at least a 2.5-hour movie. Ideally, a 3-hour movie. You know, I mean, it could have easily been a 3-hour movie and still been action-packed and fast-paced and exciting. Because I just felt like some of the character moments, while the ones that they did include from the book are really well done, it would have been nice if they'd had a little bit more elbow room, a little bit more room to breathe. There is a small selection of deleted scenes on here, but honestly, it's deleted scenes that I think were better left out. There's not really much more material from the book. It's basically stuff that would have. I mean, one of the things people complained about in the original trailer was that they felt that they were blowing the big twist, namely that Ender has not been playing a game ever since he came to command school. He's actually been commanding the fleet. They just kind of kept that from him, and actually that was one other big difference was in the book, the simulator. Well, I mentioned about how the teammates were in the room in the book, whereas they were all separate in the or in the room in the movie, but all separate in the book. The other thing was how the simulator was presented. Like in the book, the simulator very much looks like a simulator. I mean, just like video game representations of the ships and everything. Whereas in the movie, it's, I don't think it's as big a surprise that when you find out that he's actually been commanding the ships, because if this is a game, this has the best graphics ever. It's just the simulator doesn't look much like a simulator. It looks like you're standing there watching an actual battle, and it's pretty spectacular. But kind of suspend that disbelief and just pretend along with the kids that you're just seeing really good graphics in a video game, and it is presented in such a way as to suggest that it's artificial, because whenever the viewer closes, everything pixelates and then sort of washes away, like video game graphics might in that type of setup. But anyway, yeah, Ender's Game, good stuff. So I think honestly, if you've seen the movie and you're confused, I'm not surprised. As I say, I think it suffers a little bit from Dune syndrome and that they tried to cram a little bit too much. That said, I think the condensation of events actually works quite well. Things are condensed and tightened up nicely, hits all the major beats. But if you really want to get the full story and see why everybody loves this story so much, definitely check out the book. It's it's great stuff. And if you like it, there's about 12 more in the series. It's a huge series, and there's more coming, apparently. One other adaptation I really want to pick up is the Marvel Comics adaptation. I flipped through a little bit of the first trade paperback collected edition the other day, and it looks really well done. Really, really fantastic artwork. I should mention also, talking about sort of a more expansive adaptation, there is an unabridged audiobook of Ender's Game. It runs about 11 hours. So basically, if they wanted to include everything from the book, it would have been 11 hours long. But even longer than that, like I was saying before, sometimes there are sections in the book where it's like just a couple of paragraphs, but it conveys a ton of information, and to take the information conveyed in those 2 paragraphs and put it on the screen would be like a 5-10 minute scene. So yeah, the audiobook runs 11 hours, but honestly, to dramatize absolutely everything from the book, you'd probably be looking at a 16-hour miniseries. I mean, it would just be huge. And there's no way you can do that in a movie. So they've taken 2 hours of that, 2 hours of the most important stuff, and put it into a movie, which is quite good. I think that's about it. I have no idea how long this is. All I know is it feels like I've been talking about it for a very long time. So I'm going to stop now. Yeah, but I guess just to sum up, any time a book is adapted into a movie, it's not going to have everything from the book, because you can't. You just cannot. It is not possible unless you do it in a more expanded form. If you're just doing it as a movie, don't go into the movie expecting to see the entire book on the screen, because that is impossible. You have to set that expectation level appropriately and not put it all the way up here, because it'll never be up here. Put it about, mid-range, where it should be. Approach it the way I do, if it helps. Just make sure they get the feel of it right. And that's the main thing. They get the main story right. You're not going to have everything. You will never have everything, which is why I get tired of people saying, whoa, the book was better. It's like, of course. The book is always better. The book has no limits on running time. I mean, a book can be 5,000 pages long if they want it to be, and tell as big a story as they want. It doesn't matter. When you're taking that and condensing it down to a film, there's going to be concessions made, and you have to be accepting of that when you go to see an adaptation. It's going to be different every time. I mean, the comic book is going to be different in some way. The characters may not look exactly the way I pictured them when I read the book, but I expect that going in, because that is that artist's interpretation of that material. Just as this is this director's interpretation of that material, while simultaneously being a little bit saddled with studio interference and pressure to keep the time down. Fucking studio interference, man. Like, just let the director make the movie. It's a huge, wonderful story, and I don't know. That said, I think he did a great job. 2 thumbs up for Ender's Game the book, and 2 thumbs up for Ender's Game the movie. That is it from me to you for now. So until next time, thanks for watching, and sayonara.